Well, welcome to the third day of spring, 2021. Of course, not a whole lot got done last year, but spring is back and the grass is getting green. I actually mowed it on the first day of spring. I got the 54 uncovered and tried to start it a couple of weeks ago, and I had some problems with that. Specifically battery and battery cables. I've had an Optima in it, but when I tried to start this thing, it was turning pretty slow. I cleaned the terminals. I cleaned the terminals where the battery cable attaches to the solenoid. I took off the connection where the ground cable attaches to the water manifold, clean all that up. Helped a little bit, but not like it should. The other Optima was not discharged, but I did charge it. I charged it probably 30 hours. And it's still, it would turn the engine pretty well for, maybe 10 seconds and start slowing down. So I went ahead, that other Optima was 12, almost 13 years old. So I went ahead and got a new 6-volt Optima. And when I crank it, these cables, especially the terminal and the cable right here and over here on the ground, would get quite hot. So I knew I had problems with the cables. You can see that this one is cracked right here, and that's a result of using a negative clamp on a positive terminal, because if you don't know it, these terminals are different sizes. So I bought these this cable and this cable back when I first got the car. I got them from Napa, and they're 1/0 or aught cable, which is supposed to be pretty good for a 6-cylinder or 6-volt. I'm sorry, but you just see they're open to the weather here. I really don't know how well they're crimped. So both these cables were getting hot. This one that goes from the far side of the solenoid down to the starter, that was in the old stock cable that I had, that I put on. It doesn't seem to get hot. So after a lot of thought, I decided to order some new cables and get the 2-aught cable, which is even larger in diameter than these. So all 3 of these cables I measured and getting new. But I also got a 4th cable I'm going to attach right here, and going to run down the engine, and I'm sorry for the light, but run down the engine along the side of the block to the upper starter bolt. So that's what we're getting ready to do. Let me show you the cables I've got. Alright, out here on the front porch where it's lighter out, even though it's fairly late in the afternoon. These cables came from Custom Battery Cables LLC, and they're in Apache Junction, Arizona. And those of y'all who know about old westerns should recognize Apache Junction. There are a lot of western movies and shows filmed there. So Custom Battery Cables. I've gotten cables from these people before. I got a cable set for my 93 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and that has a real complicated set of battery cables on it, and I was very happy with that. So here's the cable that will go from the negative battery terminal to the solenoid. So it's got a 5/16 lug on the end. And you notice it has a negative sized clamp. Here's the cable that will go from the positive battery terminal over to the water manifold. So that's also a 5/16 size lug. And you notice that's a positive clamp. So they're sized correctly. You'll notice how they shrink wrap these. They do a really good job of shrink wrapping the connections in both places. So this is the cable that goes from the starter side of the solenoid, 5/16 lug, down to the starter, the terminal on the starter, and that's a 3/8 lug. And then this is the cable that will go from the water manifold, the extra ground, with the water manifold run down along the pan rail to the upper starter bolt, and so that has a 1/2" hole in it. Actually it's a 7/16 bolt, but they didn't have 7/16 lugs, so don't think there's going to be a problem there. I'm going to use a washer over that. So this is what we've got. You can see that these are really thick cable. The outside diameter is over 1/2 inch. I think it's like 570 thousandths. So this is definitely a step up from the cables I have on the car now, and then I'll be adding that ground. So I do recommend these people. Very quick. Got them to me very quickly. You tell them exactly what the lengths you want, how you want them made, what color, they have all kinds of different clamp styles. So they're not cheap. You know, copper's gotten pretty expensive, but you know, you get what you pay for. So let's go ahead and start getting these on. Alright, I decided to do a before and after. So I've got the battery cables hooked up. I've got my remote starter switch, and one lead is connected to the terminal on the starter. Now in 54, the starter solenoid terminal was grounded to engage it, so I've got the other end hooked to the ground. And so to give you an idea, and I don't like the way this sounds, so there's your before. So we'll do that after we get the battery cables changed out, and we'll see how different it sounds. By the way, this is a 1964 259. It has a 1956 bell housing that connected up to a square bolt pattern T86, and it has a 6-volt gear on the flywheel and a 6-volt starter, because the car is still 6 volts. So just in case you were wondering what we had here. Alright, so I've taken the starter and I've cleaned the area around the lower starter bolt. I think I told you the extra ground cable would be going up on the upper bolt, but it's not, it's the lower. So I've cleaned that up. I've also cleaned up where the cable from the solenoid goes, and I've went ahead, since I really can't get to that well, and put the copper conductive grease on that. Let me show you what I have. I've got to set this starter down though. It's called Core Shield. No, Copper Shield. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read in the screen. There we go. It's a conductive anti-corrosion surface compound made by Thomas and Betts. And it's mainly used when you're crimping, lugs onto cables. You use it, but it can also be used for other mating surfaces, coat threads, or mating surfaces with compound. Whoop. On bus bars, etc. So I got this from Eastwood years ago, and they don't sell it anymore. There's plenty left. You don't use much, so I haven't had to buy it, but there's the number, 201-31879, if they still make it. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get this starter back up and start hooking these cables up. Alright, we're quite a bit along here. We've got the cable from the solenoid down to the starter. It's in, which you really can't see very well from here. And then the additional ground cable, which is this one, it's in. I had to make a clamp to hold it where I want it to be. And let's look under the car. I'll show you how it runs there. So hopefully you can see the cable running next to the fuel pump. Then I know this isn't working out too well. A little light here, and it runs next to the oil pan behind the starter and comes down and attaches to the bolt that holds the starter in. So that's the auxiliary ground. It's out of the way of the steering arm. It's far away from the exhaust as I can get it. So we'll see how that does. Next step is to hook up the auxiliary ground cable. That'll go to that water manifold bolt. The main ground over to the battery will go there. I hope you can see this because I can't see the camera. So let's go ahead and get that hooked up, and we'll come back when that's done. Alright, everything's hooked up. There's the grounds. Things hooked up with the battery. The battery hold down is on. Bob Palmer. Hope you notice that. And this is how this Optima fits in there, so I live with that. And the negative cable hooked up with the solenoid. Both sides hooked up. The auxiliary hookups there. So we're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and get it down off the jack stands, and we'll both find out how it's going to do at the same time. So, got my remote starter hooked up. Let's see what happens. That's pretty good. That is a lot faster than it was. Yep. That is a lot faster. I'm happy. I think we can call this a success. Now, I guess I'm going to go see if it'll start. I'm probably going to pull this distributor out, but because it probably needs, I'm thinking maybe the condenser's getting weak, but we'll see. Okay, one more test. One final test. This car has always been bad about when it's hot, it would barely crank over. So I've driven it, I drove it, got it well up to temperature, brought it home, parked it, let it sit 15 minutes. So it's hot soaked, so we're going to see how this does. So hopefully it's going to come out good. Well, it cranks just as fast, hot as it does cold, so I'm going to say this was a success. So, thanks for watching. Again, place I got my battery cables, and I bought them. I got nothing free from them, but they're custombatterycables.com, and this is the second set I've got from them. Thanks for watching.